Welcome once again to the Wednesday webinar from Boundary Systems. My name is Michael Wimberly, and we will be discussing change management in Windchill. So, of course, the overall objective of this webinar is to review and demonstrate change management with the Windchill. The agenda for it is pretty standard. We'll go through a general introduction of myself and Boundary Systems, give a topic overview as far as information we're actually going to cover, and of course the product demonstration after that, and then there'll be a Q&A at the end. In your webinar dialogue on the side, there is an area over there for questions. You can type in your questions. My plan is to address all the questions at the end, but if there is something that is relevant to where I am, I will answer that question as well during that time. But once again, the overall goal is to have a Q&A at the end of the actual presentation. All right, so general introduction. Myself, Michael Wimberly. I am a senior technical specialist here at Boundary Systems. I've been working with PTC products now for over 20 years, basically around 25 years now. I am also a certified trainer in Creo and Windchill classes, and also a certified implementation specialist for Windchill. Boundary Systems itself is a company that is located in Cleveland, Ohio, not far from the airport, actually in Middleburg Heights. They've been around for quite some time now. We are a technology leader. Some of our partners include, of course, PTC, Solid Thinking, eTraj, ZWCAD, and there are some additional tech companies as well that we are partners with as well. We've also been one of the 16th fastest growing private companies in the greater Cleveland area, and some of our overall capabilities include product lifecycle management, data management, CAD design and consulting, as well as simulation and product development. What we display on this overhead are just a few of the customers that we currently worked with or have worked with in the past. And of course, this isn't the all-encompassing list of everyone, but this is just a small envelope of the companies that we've worked with or are working with. Some of the industry awards that we've had, we've also been in the Inc. 5000 as well as the Weatherhead 100, which is Northeast Ohio's fastest growing companies. And then some of our major accreditations that allow us to be one of the technology leaders is we are a Windchill Certified Implementer, we are a PTC Preferred Service Provider, and once again, we are a PTC Certified Training Partner. So we do training classes not only locally in our office in Cleveland, but we also hold them here in Cincinnati, which is where I'm at. And of course, all over the country, we can always come to you. We have a mobile training center that we can also bring to you. If it's more convenient to do it on site, then come to one of our training facilities, and we'll show you the information on that at the end of everything. All right, and then once again, just some of our additional solutions: PTC Solutions, Solid Thinking, eTraj, Modex 3D, Mentor Graphics, and ZWCAD. We also do hold webinars covering some of the information on some of these products as well. So if you want to find out some additional information, you can get in touch with me, or you can even just go to our YouTube page, our Boundary Systems YouTube page, and they'll be listed on there as well. All right, so if you want any additional information, you can contact me directly through either the phone or through email. My phone number is area code 513-415-0747, and my email address is mwimberly@boundarysys.com. If you have any sales-related questions, you can contact our sales department by emailing at sales@boundarysys.com, or you can call the office at 440-274-0291. All right, so in this webinar, we're basically going to go into change management once again, and the main things that we're going to go through and cover are the change management tools, the actual process itself, and then the overall results after you've once again executed the change management or the change process. So at this point, we're going to go right into a demonstration. And we'll start here. All right, so with change management overall, once again, the whole thing is, of course, to go in and monitor the actual change process inside of Windchill. So it is CM certified, as far as the actual process itself. You can go through and add some additional tasks or things to them, but it is a certified process based on the industry standards. You can go through and use three main items. There is a problem report, which is basically can be used by anyone. That's something that you're just going to go through and actually report a problem that you may have. It can be done on the shop floor. It can be done by a service person. They just need to go in and connect to Windchill. They can also go through and directly relate it to the component that they're having an issue with and simply submit that as a report or a problem. That report now gets sent to the role that is labeled as Change Administrator 1. They then get that problem report, they evaluate the problem report and figure out whether or not that problem report is something that may be a onesie type thing, or it could be a design issue. And if it is a design issue, then they can go in and take that problem report and transfer it over into a change request, which now will go through and specify that this thing needs to actually be changed. We can specify the priority of it, when it needs to be done. We can also specify the path that it needs to go through. Is this something that can be a quick change, or does it need to go through a review board to actually go through and look at the process? Because more than just maybe the design engineer or the engineering manager needs to look at it. People from other departments may need to look at it as well, so they can go through and verify that too. Or you can go through once again the quick process, which is just the regular approval through the engineering manager and ship it through. Then you can then after that, you can create a change notice. The change notice is the actual work to be done, and you can assign the actual items and who it actually is associated, or who actually has to do the work, and then who checks it. So we're going to go through that process as a whole. So we're going to go in and start with this blower assembly here, and I'm going to go through and going to specify a new problem report. Now with this, you can see that I have problem report listed. I also have change request listed, and I also have the change notice listed. Now, by default in the system, a change notice cannot be executed by itself. It has to actually come through a change request. I've actually changed one of the preferences inside of my Windchill system that will allow it to be displayed here, so I can technically go right to a change notice to create one. But in the normal flow of things, a change request is where a change notice has to come from. A problem report is optional. Because a problem report can be executed. If it's a onesie type thing and it doesn't need to go any further, then that process gets killed right there with the problem report, and it doesn't need to go into the change request. So the problem report is an optional item. Once again, it's just kind of an evaluation piece of it. Hey, take a look at this. We ran into this problem. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. So select on the create a new problem report, and then I'm going to go in and call this something simple, just problem 1. The requester, I'll go ahead and type in my name as a person that's requesting. Now the category, where do I think this fits? Is it for cost reduction? Is it a design issue that I found while I was on the shop or on the floor doing assemblies? Is it a documentation issue? Is it something that the documentation says one thing and the actual parts are showing something else? Do we need to update the document? Something other, of course, product improvement, quality improvement, and then of course, is it a safety issue? So we're going to go ahead and specify this as a design issue, and then the priority of it, we can specify low, medium, high, and then of course also whether or not it's an emergency. We'll go ahead and leave it at, well, we'll change it to medium, and then we can give it a due date. This actually, because we are planning on doing some work over the weekend, we need this to be done by Friday. So I'm going to go in and say I need this resolved by Friday. And the problem, I can just go in and say review drawing to make sure fittings, make sure thickness is okay. So something simple like that. You can put as much detail in there as you want to. After that, I've gone through, and this is just once again setting up what we're going to see. The next is affected end items. Now, end items deal with WT parts. So we can go through and create this on the CAD files. If you're only using CAD files, then you can still go through and execute this, but you will lose some of the additional functionality that it's beneficial inside of the change process. But once again, you can do this strictly with CAD files as well. I'll address that question in just a moment. Give me a few minutes to get through this process. I'm sorry, somebody just sent in a question. But once again, for this affected end items, we can go through and specify, once again, an end item being the top level item or the deliverable that you specify for the product that you're in. So I'm going to go ahead and add an end item because this is the top level assembly. And for the name, I'm going to go in and type in engine. And this is the actual engine. So I'm working in the blower assembly, but the blower assembly is associated with the engine end item. So I'm going to go through and specify that me affecting this blower will once again have an effect on the overall end item, which is the deliverable being the engine blower. All right, so now that item's in there. Now I'll go ahead and select next. And after that is going in, of course, showing the item. And currently I've just selected the blower. So I can select the blower, and then I want to go through and add some additional items to that. So by default, it goes and of course it collects all the required information based on the settings here. And then I also, of course, want to go through and collect the WT parts that are associated with them as well. So I want all that information to be inside of my change process. So everything will be listed there. There's all the WT parts. There's all the CAD files. I'll sort everything by name so you can see everything next to each other. And then if I want to go through and add specific notes, I can go through in here and say check thickness and hole count for flange. And I'll do that on the part file, the actual CAD part file, and then I'll say check hole count with flange. So of course, if I'm going to mount that to the impeller housing, I need the flange and the housing numbers to be the same. At that point, I can go through and specify any attachments. So if I have any documentation that I want to go through and add, if I have any pictures, videos, anything that I want to go through and add as an associate attachment here, I can go through and do that. I'm going to go ahead and attach a local file, and I'm going to go through and add this little icon, which is an oops icon, just something to add just because you can. And then once again, select next. Now with this, if there were some other items that we want to go through or changes also associated with, maybe we already have one in process, we can go through and set that up as well, or we can associate those to this problem report as well. But of course, we don't have anything as far as that, so there's nothing already in process that we need to associate this with. So at this point, I'll go ahead and say finish. Now, when I go through and select that, if I need to go through and do some double checking on some things, I can go ahead and say submit later. Or if where I'm at right now, I'm ready to go through and submit that, I'll go ahead and do that right now, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say submit now. And that problem report has been created. Now, when I go back to my home page and my task, there's the task to go through and analyze this page. Now, I also want to go through and make sure that I accept this because there are multiple people that are assigned. So I want to go through and make sure that I accept this. And as you can see on the screen, we do have this set up so the email notification comes through as well. So you do get notified of the task that you have. So even if you're not in Windchill, you will get an email that specifies you have a task that you need to go through and look into. So I've gone in and accepted that. When I've done that, it went in and removed everybody else associated with that. So now this is just my task. Nobody else has to worry about this at this point in time. All right, so let's jump over real quick. There was a question. It said, what is the best way to get a multi-level tree compare before and after bombs with differences reports? Inside of the structures, when you're actually doing a structure, you can do a compare inside of there. And let me see if I can pull this up just so you can see what I'm referring to. I'm going to go in and select on this one. So when I'm actually in my structures, I can go in and do a compare right here. And I can compare the part structure, I can compare the CAD structure, and I can compare the different versions of them. So when I do my compare part structure, I can compare what the current one is to one of the previous ones. So I'm able to go through and specify that, and it will show the differences between the two inside of there. So we can go through and actually use that to go in and define that. And no, baselines are not required to go through and do any of this. Baselines are helpful because, once again, it's a way of tracking versioning and important information as far as milestones. But to go in and create your change process, baselines are not required to go in and do any of that. All right, so once again, I'm going to go back into the my tasks that I've been assigned, which is the analyze the problem report. And as change admin 1, I can now go through and evaluate. So I can see inside of here, there's my attachment. And I can go in and look at the thumbnail of the attachment. And it goes in and shows, oh, oops, there's a problem. So, of course, that will be a legitimate image that we will go through and show, of course. Of that, here is the actual status. You can see, once again, I've been assigned, or I've taken the assignment. Myself and others have been assigned, but I took the actual assignment itself. And then down here at the bottom is where we go through and specify where this goes next. So basically, if I've gone through and evaluate this problem report and said, yes, this is an actual problem, I can now go through and say confirmed as a problem, and I can move it forward into a change request. I can go in and say not verified. I can tell it's not reproducible, which means that was a one-time thing. I can't go through and actually make it happen again. So once again, can't really move forward because I can't make it happen again. Will not resolve, maybe because it's on an old version and we have a new version that's coming out. And it's a duplicate issue. We've run into this before. We're actually in the process of fixing that, or I need some clarification. So with that, I can get clarification, send it back. They can go through and add some additional information as necessary, and then go back through this process again. So to actually see the actual problem report, I can come up here, select on problem report. And when I select on it, I can then see all of the information inside of here. I can see the actual items that are affected by this, the notes that were actually added to the change request, the problem report. And once again, I can pull each one of those up into Creo or into Creo View, whichever one is necessary, to go through and evaluate what they're referring to, and then specify which direction I need to go from here. I'll go ahead and go back to the actual workflow itself. And after evaluating this, I've decided, yes, this is an actual issue that we need to go through and resolve. So I'm going to leave this as the item being confirmed. And I can basically say, just say problem confirmed. And complete that task. Great. Now, once again, at this point, it doesn't actually go through and kick in and tell me that I need to go through and create a problem report. But I can come down here and I can see, first off, in my notes or in my updates that I have a report. And once again, there's a notification that this problem report has been confirmed. What I'm able to do with this is I'm actually able to come in, and this is what it looks like. I can actually come over here and select on this, and it'll actually take me into the problem one problem report. Now I have a different browser that's linked to this, so when I do this, it'll actually open up a different browser. But this will actually go through and take you to whatever your default browser is, opening it up. And what it basically does, it takes you right into this problem report. So once again, we've confirmed it that everything is good. We do need to go through and resolve this. So I can now come up here into actions. And under actions, I can now go through and specify that I want to create a new problem, change request from this problem report. Now, at this point, I simply want to take the information that I've already specified in the problem report and propagate that down into my change request. So I'll go ahead and select propagate information, and it now goes in, has the actual problem name. It is a design issue, it's a medium priority. There's the actual information. Description of the problem is reviewed drawing to make sure thickness. Proposed solution, after it's been reviewed, change thickness. Change thickness and number of holes. Now with this, is there a reoccurring cost? There's not a reoccurring cost for this, so I'm going to go ahead and specify that this does not have one, but this will be a cost up front that needs to be taken care of. So I'll go ahead and specify that this is $1,500. All right, and then once again, at that point, I'll go ahead and select next. And because I've propagated the information from the problem report, you can see that it's still using that same end item to go through and show me the item that is going to be affect top level wise. Once again, select next. And there is all the information. So the affected items. If I did in my research find out that there were some other items that were also going to be affected, I can then go through and add those items here as well. So if it was more than just the blower assembly, there were some additional items that needed to be changed, I can go through and specify those here as well. Select next. And then once again, the actual images that we've gone through and specified, we can go in and add any additional images as necessary. And I'll go in and add my Homer image. And now we have our Homer Simpson image added to it as well. Next, and then once again, this is where we would now specify. So let's say this was that there was an item with this process already in it, or another problem report or change request for the blower assembly. I can now go through and now add that additional change request or change notice, whatever it may be, to this, or an additional problem report that may have been added as well. So I can now add that. So I'm kind of grouping those together into a single change request so that I don't have multiple change requests going around. I can have this one that now encompasses all those problem reports that have been created. So once we have that, everything defined, I'll go ahead and finish this off. And once again, I have the ability to go through and specify to do it now or submit it later. Once again, I'm going to do it now. And close that out. Go back to my home page. And then once again, in the home page, I have the analyze change request. And then I'll also have the email that will come through that tells me that I have the change request, which it should come through in a moment. So here's the change request. There it is. Analyze change request. So once again, it's coming through and letting me know, once again, whether I'm in Windchill or outside of Windchill, that I have something I need to go through and look at. So here's the information. So here's the file. Once again, I can go through and specify the change request for the problem one. I can go through and now look at that to evaluate that. I can look at the items that once again are impacted here. If I need to change any of this information, there's the edit. And when I go in and edit, it takes me right back into the change request, and I can add any additional information. So for this one, it took me right to the affected items because that's where I was, but I can still go to any of the additional areas to go through and add any additional information as necessary. All right, so down here is where we go through and specify which direction this change request needs to take. Fast track, full track, do I need clarification on this? Do I need to reassign this? Because it's not in my wheelhouse, there's somebody else that needs to look at this. Do we go through and reject it? After we've had further discussion on it, we've decided that this isn't a design change on this item. We're just going to go in and create a brand new design, new part numbers, the whole thing. So we're not going to go in and affect this blower assembly. We're going to create a different blower assembly. So I can reject this and then simply go the other route. Or of course, again, I can go through and just do a general review and still have a discussion on it that says, okay, we need to talk about this a little bit more versus going forward with it. Now, fast track and full track. Once again, fast track is simply going through. Change administrator 1 has this information. They can review it and they can decide whether or not, yep, this is a simple change. We can go through and incorporate this now. Or maybe it's fast track because it's an emergency. We don't have time to go through all the other reviews. This has to be done. It's quick, it's simple, get it done. That way we don't run into any issues up front, or later on, I should say. Or once again, the full track is, okay, this is the area that it's affecting, but it could affect other areas. So we need to bring in manufacturing, we need to bring in tooling, we need to bring in marketing and packaging, whoever it may be, so we can go through and have an overall discussion on this item before we move forward. Because yes, this is a small change, but it can affect other areas of this product. So that's where you kind of have the full track, which now takes it to a review board, and you can specify who can be in that review board as well. So for this example, we're going to go right to the fast track area. So I'm going to go ahead and say complete this task to go down the fast track path. And then now, it now gives me the ability to go through and create the actual change notice now. So the change request was, yes, the change request is being made. We do want to move forward to go in and make this change. The notice is the actual change is being done. And this is the information, once again, that we have. And once again, the files that we're going to go through and associate. Now, you can see here that when we go in and look at these files now, if somebody was to pull up these files inside of Windchill, or look at these files inside of Windchill, they're going to go in and see these small little icons here. These icons basically simply lets them know that there's actually a change process happening. So, and if you notice, I actually just got 2 emails. The email was one that says I have to go through and execute a change notice. The other one was simply saying the change request was actually approved. So those were the 2 emails that actually came. And of course, I have this set up that I'm receiving everything. All right. So I'm going to go through in here, create the new change notice. So inside of here, I'm going to go in and select on the actual change request itself. And then in the change request, I'm going to go through and specify to create the actual change notice. So I'm creating the change request from the change notice from the change request. So I can propagate, of course, that information directly from the change request, which it got from the actual problem report. And as you can see, all that information simply propagates down. Because I did go in and specify fast track, that is the one that it's using. But once again, if through further discussion, it was decided that this needs to go through a full track, I can still go through and change that at this point in time. So I will once again leave it at fast track and then go ahead and select next. When I select next, this is the actual implementation of that. So this is the actual work that needs to be done. So this is the actual task that needs to be executed. So I'll go ahead and say edit change task. And then I can go through and rename it if I want to. Now, these are the 2 people that are going to be assigned the information. The first one is the person who's actually doing the work. So the assignee is the person who's going to get the task that need to go through and update the information. The second one is basically the checker. The person is going to go through and review it to make sure that what was supposed to be done is done properly. And then once again, you can see the information being propagated as far as when it's due and the information that needs to be done. So if I want to go through and change any of those, I would simply come through and search and go through and find, the individual that I wanted through their name, the email, whatever it is I want to go through and search by. But once again, because this is all encompassing of me, then of course I'm going to go through and be the assignee and the reviewer on this. All right, so I'll go ahead and select next. And when I do that, it now goes through and shows me the items inside of the reviewing box. So up at the top are the actual items that are actually going to be worked on. Down at the bottom are the resulting items. So when I go through and make the changes, I can then go through and add those if it's just a iteration change, or if I need to go through and create new versions of this or new revisions of this file, I can go through and do that now. And that's what I'm actually going to do. So what I'm going to do is take these files, because I don't want to affect 2.1 of any of these. I actually want to go through and create a new revision of those, so they'll actually go to 3.1. So the resulting items are the items that are actually going to be changed, or I should say, that are actually going to be the result of the change. So I'm going to select them all, and then I'm going to come up here and simply say revise. When I select on revise, of course, it's now going to revise those to the next revision level, which of course for those will be 3. And I'll go ahead and select OK. And now, as you can see, those items automatically come down to resulting objects. So when it's time to do the actual work, I'm going to be doing the work on the 3.1 versions. So those will go to 3.1, 3.2 until I'm actually done with the changes that I've gone through and executed. Up here, remember I talked earlier about the benefit of using the WT parts. So the benefit of WT parts is you can also go through and specify what to do with the existing items. So things that are on order, the things that are at work in progress, or the things that are finished, we already have in shop. So we can go through and specify, anything that's in order or that's on order. I can go through and say return. Anything that is in process, I'll go ahead and say rework. And then anything that is finished, I'll go ahead and say, let's do retrofit. So you can see you have a bunch of different options that you can do for each of those. Oh, there's a question that just came up. Let's see. Okay, so the question that came in was, do you see customers that have their downstream users create the problem report or the change request? For a lot of the customers, they go right to a change request. The problem report is kind of, the shop floor, and I'm just using shop as an example. But the shop floor may have found an issue, and they may have already, so instead of doing a problem report from the shop floor, they may have called you and said, hey, come down here, we have an issue. And when they find the issue, you have already talked about it. Now you go back to the office, or the engineer goes back to the office, and now they execute a change request, because a problem report was basically done in person versus them going in and documenting it online. So a lot of them do the change request versus the problem report, once again, because a lot of that is still done through a manual process as far as communicating with someone. And then if not, how are change requests communicated to engineering? Like I said, I think that's more of, that kind of goes with that first part, is the communication with the change request. The problem report piece of it is done manually by them calling you and you going down and having that discussion. Is there a way to specify to use a new part number if revising is not allowed per business rules? So what you would do with that is, at this point, before you actually go and do the task, or you can do it after the fact, because this can still be edited after the fact. So you can still go through and create your parts, and then once you're done with those, you can just come over here and add those. So you can do them up front. So you, as the engineering manager, can go ahead and create the new parts. And I don't know if I read that out loud. The question was, is there a way to specify the use to use a new part number if revising is not allowed per business rules, instead of revising? And once again, the way you would do that is either before or after the fact. So if you know that you have to go through and make that particular change, or you have to go in and create the new part number, go ahead and do that even before you submit the change request, or the change notice, sorry. That way you can go through and simply add the information here, so that when the assignee gets the task, they'll already have the new parts that they have to work on. Or maybe that's part of the assignee's task. So part of what they have to do, and you may put it over here in the notes or in the comments, that says create a new part number, or create new parts, and then attach them underneath. So that may be the process. So it just depends on how it wants to be done. So it can still be done. You just can't necessarily do that inside of here. So you can still go in and create the actual files, but then just attach them by going in and finding them inside of the Windchill database. Okay. All right. So now backing back up into the actual change task is, once again, we can specify the work, the actual current work. So the items that we currently have on order, in process, or finished. What do we want to do with those particular items? We can specify that here. Once again, that's one of the benefits of the WT parts. One of the other benefits of the WT parts is also being able to go through and specify when these new parts take effect. So I can actually come down here and select these, and then under actions, I can go through and specify their effectivity. So maybe it is a new design, but we want to go ahead and finish using the items up here at the top. So we're going to give you until the end of the month to go in to set those up, and I can go through and set the effectivity of those to be a specific date. So I can go through and specify when I want those to actually be executed. Set the effectivity of that particular one, and once again, I'm going to go through it and set it to this exact date, which is going to be May 1. So starting May 1st is when we're going to go through and begin to execute that. And then, of course, I'm not going to put in an end date because this is a new design, so it's not going to be ended anytime soon. So I'll go ahead and select OK. And then I can set, that will be set as the effectivity on those particular items. So we'll actually see that when we're actually in the information tools, or we view the information of those particular items. All right. So at this point, we've gone through and specified the new items that we need to work on. We can go over here and now finish everything. We've set the effectivity. All that can be done. Now at this point, we're back into the implementation plan. Now, remember I mentioned before, one of the things that we can also do is have other problem reports associated as well. So there may be multiple things that need to be fixed on this blower assembly. So this task that we have here is specifically for the change request that we went in and created. So if there's other things that also need to be done, we can then come over and actually create a new change task. And now go through and give instructions on the second items that need to be changed. And once again, if there's a couple of more, or there's 2 or 3 additional ones, we can go through and create tasks for each one of those. And those will all now be incorporated into this actual change request. I'm sorry, change notice. So now that change notice will have multiple tasks that need to be completed versus just this one single task. And each task can have its own assignee and reviewer as well. So each one can be set up specifically for who needs to see it. And then once again, select next. If there's any additional attachments that we need, once again, documentation, videos, pictures, whatever it may be, we can go through and add that, or just documents as a whole. If there's some documentation that we need to go through and add, we can add that here. And then once again, if we want to go through and add in the associated tasks, we can go in and do that too. All right. Oh, that was a new question. Sorry. The question is, are the on order, in progress, and finished selections in affected objects attributes that can be found in the part? In the WT part, you will be able to see that in the, I think that's just associated with the change request or change notice. Yeah, I think that's just a change attribute, not an actual attribute inside of the actual part. But that change, the change that you actually create does, once again, is directly associated with the actual object itself. So when you do find the object, you can go through and actually see that for that particular version of the file. But yeah, that is a change attribute. Can the change attribute be exported? I'm not 100% sure. That's something I would have to look into. You meant to have it displayed basically outside of the actual change process. I'm making a note of that now. I'm assuming that's what the question is, to be able to see that outside of the actual change request or change notice. So yeah, I'll look into that and see. I'm sorry, I'm writing a note real quick. Yes, they expounded on it and mentioned the ERP system. So yeah, I'll verify whether or not that can be exported out, and then of course, as you say, imported into the ERP system. So that's what the general question is can we take that out and import it into the ERP system? So once again, we can go through and see that in the ERP for that specific version of the file. So like I said, I'll verify that and update you on that. No problem. All right, so at that point, once again, I'll go ahead and finish. And once again, submit it now. All right, so now that it's submitted, I'll go back to my home page, and I'll see inside of there. So once again, there is a change notice. So I'll come over here and select complete change notice task. And of course, there's a change notice submission that I'll have. There's the first email. And now there's a change task. I will go through and select on the change task. Oh my gosh. And then inside of here, we see once again the affected items and the resulting items. And these are the items that I would now go through and select. So I can go through and find these CAD files. View the information on them. So I can go directly to here. I can see that once again, resulting change exists. I would now go in and add that to my workspace. And I'll create a new workspace. And this change request may be an ECN. And then I'll just say 1, 2, something. That'll be the workspace that I'm actually adding everything to. I can verify that the information that I need is now going to be added to that particular workspace. Great. And then I will go into Creo. Let me refresh my Creo session. I'm sorry, my Windchill window. And I'm going to go through and make this new workspace, my active workspace. And I can see the actual files inside of there. And of course, make any changes that are necessary directly inside of Creo. So there's the impeller housing, there's the actual flange. Once again, I can go in and make the changes as necessary between those two. You guys understand all that stuff. All right. So now once I'm done with any of the changes that I've made, I can now go back to that change notice. And once everything is completed, I will go in and simply say complete, because I've completed my task. And then once again, because I am also the reviewer, I now get the review task. And I would now come through and review the information to verify that what they've done is valid. They've done the changes according to what we needed. And I can go through and send this forward. If it's not completed, I can go through and select rework, give them comments on what it is they need to go through and fix. And then once they fix it, they would now go through and resubmit that. And then we'll go through this process again. I would then go through and verify that they did make the changes appropriately this time, and then complete it, which is once again what I'm going to do at this point. So I'll go ahead and complete this task. Now, once that overall task is completed, so we created the problem report, we took the information from the problem report, we propagated that to the change request, we then took the change request and then created the actual change notice, which is the actual work. So we propagated that, went in and created the new files that we needed, and then the actual tasks were completed. That was now reviewed, and it was deemed that everything was done appropriately. Now there's one final task, which is basically done by the one that we call the auditor. And what they're doing at this point in time is now reviewing everything. And once again, I'm going to accept this so that once again, everybody else that's listed here does not get or does not actually see that anymore, because now it's just a task that I'm going to go through and accept. So I'm now going in as Change Administrator 3, and Change Administrator 3 once again now reviews the entire process. The purpose of Change Administrator 3 is now to step back through from the beginning of this process all the way to the final changes and verify that from the problem report, this is what was reported. This is reported, great. We now went in and said, okay, let's create a change request from that, and let's go in and now make the changes of this. This is what we specified in the change request. We now executed that into the change notice. In the change notice, we assigned these tasks. We went in and made sure that this work was done appropriately, and what we have is now finalized. Everything is good. Anybody else that may need to go through and touch it before we go through and fully finalize this, that we can go through and actually have them look at it at this point in time. So once again, I can step back through the whole thing. There's the actual change notice itself. As I said, step back through the processes and actually see the change notice, see the change request, and everything else from there. All right, so everything we can go through once again and verify one at a time to make sure everything that we needed was done appropriately. And once again, to the specs that we've gone through and set up. Once that's gone in and completed, we can now go through, once again, audit is complete. We can go through and complete the task. And because of the way we've gone through, and I'm not sure if any of you all have actually set up the actual change, the lifecycle lifecycle information. If you've actually set that up, then one of the transitions in the life cycle is change. And what you're specifying with the change is the actual state that it goes to after the change request is completed. So if we go back to this problem, or actually I'll just go back to my directory. So I'm going to go back to the actual, I'll go to this file here. And what we specify is when the change process is completed, release this file. So once again, if you've set up the life cycles before, one of those states, one of those transitions is once again the change transition. You're specifying after the change process, what state does it go to? So once we're finished with the change process and everything has been approved because everybody's looked at it, everybody signed off to it, it now goes in and gets released. So we finalize this, and now we can basically walk away from it knowing that what we've done is completed and everybody and everything was done to satisfaction. All right, so that's that overall change process that we can go through and use. So at this time, I'll come back here and say, that's all, folks. And are there any additional questions? Okay, I take that as a no. So I want to take this time and say thank you for coming to our Wednesday webinar. I appreciate your time. We appreciate your time. If you want more information on any of our upcoming webinars, you can always find it on our website at boundarysys.com/webinars. If you're interested in our training schedule, once again, you can find it at boundarysys.com/training-schedule. You can that as well. We also have hands-on workshops coming up. Actually, pretty soon in the near future, we have quite a few of them coming up. I will actually go here. So once again, here's our events, hands-on workshops, webinars. So we can go in and see those things as well. So we can see that there's quite a few. And now that we just actually had that one. But now that Creo 5 is out, we will be having some additional Creo 5 workshops. And as I said, some of the other software that we also support, we have those webinars as well. So definitely come in and register for any of those training schedules, training locations, courses that are offered. All that's located there on our website. And once again, if you do need to get in touch with me, you can go through and actually, once again, email or call me. 513-415-0747 or mwimberly@boundarysys.com. Once again, any sales related questions, you can reach our sales department 440-274-0291 and also the sales@boundarysys.com. Also, if you do have a technical support issue, you can also open up a tech support ticket with us as well through support.boundarysys.com. So that is actually our ticketing system, or you can send an email to support@boundarysys.com. So once again, feel free to contact us whenever you have any issues or you have any questions, training or anything like that. You can definitely go in and find us. What is the preference that needs to be changed to allow EPM documents to be added to change requests, change notices? They're the primary objects of the change requests and change notices, so I'm not sure what you're referring to. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, Joanne? Oh, okay. No, the preference change that I was referring to was the ability to go through and create a change notice without a change request. So that's what I was referring to. So the default in the system is that in order to create a change notice, it has to come from a change request. You just can't create a change notice standalone. So that's what I was referring to, was that preference, the ability to go in and create that by itself without having to change request. So that's what I was referring to. Yeah, you can add any type of objects to the actual change request or change notices. And like I said, the CAD files themselves are the primary objects of those. So they're definitely a part of that. Now, is that the preference that you actually want? Do you need that preference or not to worry about it? Oh, you do want the preference. Okay. So that preference is, and I set it in here. Under Preference Manager, if you go into Change Management, there is an option in here for change notice without change request. That's what that preference is that will allow you to go through and create that. So as you can see, once I'm going to change that back to no. And now when I go back into here and I select an object and I go to new, there's no change notice in here anymore. So that's what that preference is turning on and turning off, is the ability to go through and turn to be once again to create the change notice without the change request. All right. Any additional questions that anyone has? Anyone that's left that is still here? Okay. So once again, I thank you all for your time. And once again, feel free to contact me or contact us if you have any questions or any additional information that you would like to receive. Thank you and have a great rest of the day and rest of the week.